Hello, Darklings! So this will be my last top 10 list. If I do any more movie lists, they'll just be regular movie suggestion lists with any given number. This is just it. And this is also one that has been requested multiple times and one that I didn't exactly want to do because it's not a genre I'm particularly fond of. But the occult and demonic possessions is a very popular area in horror film. So I decided it did need addressing even if it's not one of my favorites. So number 10 spot on here is Sinister. So this film company has been doing some pretty good stuff lately. They did The Conjuring and Insidious and I think Annabelle and Oculus. I don't know if they did those too. And they all have a very particular style between all of those. I'd say between that group, Sinister is my favorite. The Conjuring needed a lot of work. Insidious showed its cards too early and lost its flash, and the others I didn't see. So this was an interesting concept. I appreciated a lot of the ideas that they put in it because they tried to reinvent it and tried to make it newer and interesting, which is hard to do in a genre that has been overworked to death in the 1970s, which this takes place in, which is beneficial because it has some homage in it, which is good. So the concept of immediately moving out of one house to prevent that one house from being the source of the problem, that's an interesting idea. The home videotape added a creepy atmosphere, and it was a good film. The next one on here, which is actually from the 70s, I'm talking about the original one here, and not the ridiculous remake I didn't see with Nicolas Cage, is The Wicker Man. Now this doesn't precisely have to do with demons, but it does have to do with something that's considered terrible to the fiercely Christian, which is paganism. So this takes place on a small island off the coast of Ireland, and a constable arrives to look into the disappearance of a young girl, and then shit is a lot weirder than he anticipates, and he is instantly enraged by the crazy pagans running amok on this island, and he finds that unacceptable. And Christopher Lee states that this is one of his favorite films of his own, which I just find to be ridiculous and really funny. It is not in its entirety today because the director hated it so much that he buried the original negative inside of a roadway, which is a little bit of a shame because while it's preposterous, it's also somehow quite good. Next one on here, which is only interesting because of historical contracts, is The Exorcism of Emily Rose. I know my friend really likes this movie, and while I find it alright, I do appreciate that it is based off of something historically relevant, which is a girl who was supposedly put through an exorcism and ended up dying of severe dehydration in Germany. I want to say in the 50s. I can't remember. I don't really keep up on anything that has to do with Catholic dogma or exorcisms. But it's a priest that's put on trial for it, and I find the concept quite interesting and successful. The next one on here, which is a very infamous story, especially for those who debate whether or not it's actually true, or if the couple just did it to get some cash, which is the Amityville Horror. I accidentally saw the 2005 remake first, which is only tolerably okay, before I got around to seeing the original one from the late 70s. And it's an interesting concept and definitely has a lot of creep factor. It's not the best I've seen, but it goes with that household demonic possession concept quite well. Next one on here, which is a little bit weirder. I've mentioned it many, many times because I'm a big fan of this series, even though this is my least favorite amongst the four, which is The Evil Dead, the original one from 1981. And this is a very interesting, weird, kind of bullshit concept on demon possession because the Raimi siblings just decided, we're going to do this because it'll be fun. So it's a little bit preposterous, it's very low budget and very odd, and doesn't quite fit with the rest of them, but still deserve to mention on this list. The next one on here, which is very, very good, and despite the fact that I hate this film director as a human being, he does make good movies. Rosemary's Baby has its own infamy, and William Castle's like, I want to do this, and then he hired big hotshot young director Roman Polanski, and he's like, I want to do this, and as it turns out, Polanski was right, and it ended up being very fucked up and very successful. With its bright color palettes, it broke the mold of what you'd expect for a horror film of that time, and ended up working very, very well. Next one on here, one that is not usually heard so much in the United States, is The Devil Rides Out, which has to do with, you know, those terrible things, secret groups and cults and demon summoning. I think its loose sequel was To the Devil a Daughter with Christopher Lee, And these films are those early 70s UK preposterous trash that was like an offshoot of Hammer but isn't. So that's definitely a fun, interesting one to watch. Next one on here, which I liked more in concept than in execution, is The Last Exorcism. It's amusing and almost impressive how you can get films that are this type of suspense disturbing that end up being only PG-13. And I appreciate that the actress was exceedingly flexible and managed to pull some things that looked very, very terrifying. It's a little bit of a found footage mockumentary type of thing, which makes it just a little bit creepier, and because the film quality is high enough, I think it's okay as a found footage deal. But still, not so big on the exorcism thing. I don't get it. Next one on here, following with the 70s tradition of the demon scare, is The Omen. I think this one success primarily lies in its build-up and its pitch, like the way that it was pitched and advertised before its release. There's a lot of weird circumstances surrounding the release of this movie, but it ended up being quite good, which is The Omen, because Damien is, you know, creepy demon child. That's always a bonus. Creepy demon children. I'm doing this for you, Damien. Although I have to say, when the one guy gets decapitated, that scene is so well executed. It's so good. It is the best decapitation sequence I've ever seen in a movie, and I've seen far too many for one person to possibly see. This works well as success and very successful in a lot of its atmospherics, its on-shooting location, and a lot of the lighting and sets were very interesting too. Plus, Gregory Peck is pretty great. The last one, number one, no one is surprised, is The Exorcist. Now, William Friedkin is not a horror movie director, so this is his only time going into the horror film industry. He was kind of an ass about that. The novel is very, very good. I just read it last year or the year before. I can't remember. But the novel's very good. The novel's about the extent that I know on exorcisms. But this movie has a lot of really good build-up. It's very well assembled. Dick Smith did an amazing job on the effects for Regan. And Linda Blair did very well for being only 13 at the time. I mean, this movie is very famous for a reason. It is Oscar-winning for its sound. And it's just a very interesting film that everybody should see at least once, even if they can't ever watch it again. So also, since this is my last top 10 list, I will offer you a little secret. This little book right here, 101 Horror Movies to See Before You Die, is one of my main inspirations for why I got into the horror film, why I turned into such a movie nerd, and where I get a few of these movie suggestions. So the top of this is more or less painted black. The bottom, not so much. The black is the stuff that I've seen. I only have 8 movies to go. But this is a very interesting little book to pick up. I mean, it's a few years old now. The most recent thing in here is The Orphanage from 2007. So this book's a little bit older. But if you want a little head start into critical thinking on the horror film, this is what I recommend, because this is what has thoroughly ruined my life and turned me into a horror movie addict. So, no more top 10s, but I hope you check this list out. Till next time, Darklings.